tuning in to watch this video. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for new punk rock videos every week and tap the bell to get notified when new videos drop. This video was brought to you by the COLDEST water bottle. You can check the link in my description to win one of these water bottles or for 10% off all your purchases. My name is Erin Micklow, and I'm here with Mr. Rob Hingley from the Toasters, legendary band. I have been a fan of your band since my early punk days. I remember seeing you in San Francisco in 2009, I think, at a little club that was so hot, and it was such a fun show.
Which one was it? The what's the all ages show out there?
I have no idea where it was. I live in LA, so I remember driving up for the weekend, and I was like, oh, the Toasters are playing. Let's go see them. Woo! And I still have a pin that I bought at that show.
Yeah, 2009 is a little bit to scroll back to get the tour dates, but it just seems like San Francisco, every time we played it, it's like in a different place. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's a little while ago. It's like, what, 12 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So I wanted to ask, how did you get your nickname, Bucket?
Well, it wasn't actually my nickname. It was a nickname of a possession I had in New York at the time back in the day. It was like we used to carry pistols around because we lived in a bad neighborhood. So it wasn't my name. It was the name of my pistol. And it came from the Pioneers tune, Long Shot, Kick the Bucket. So there's more to the story, but you're going to have to sit me down over a beer to get the rest of it.
How about some Liquid Death? It looks like a beer. Well, so I wanted to talk about, your time in New York City. You had moved from the UK to manage a comic book shop there, right?
Yeah.
It was called
Forbidden Planet.
Mm-hmm. And so can you talk about, I've seen in other interviews you've mentioned that, but you've never really told the story. Can you share that?
Well, that's kind of how I ended up coming to the States in the first place. I mean, I wanted to come, but I was working for them in London, and they had opened up the shop in New York in 1978, and it wasn't doing very well, so they asked me if I wanted to go over there and help train some of the staff, which basically meant fire them and hire new ones, and set up some systems and just help the guy out to get the store up and running. So I said, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do that. And originally they'd said, well, we're going to send you there for 3 months to do that. And I was okay, that's fine. And then I got here and 3 months turned into 6, turned into a year. And then, I ended up getting a green card, which gave me permanent residency. And I've been here ever since. So that's, over 40 years ago now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so can we talk about the Toasters in the early days, how it started in New York City? I've heard in another interview you mentioned that you had a rehearsal space that was on Avenue A, and bands such as MAGS, Bad Brains, Beastie Boys also rehearsed there. And that was just like, what a time, where you guys were all kind of starting your bands and you've all turned into these really iconic bands.
What it was, I was living on the other side of Tompkins Square Park at the time on 8th Street and Avenue B, and back at that time it was a pretty wild neighborhood.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh God, how can you live there? It's like so dangerous. I was like, dude, I was living in Brixton in London, so this is like nothing compared to that,
Yeah.
We had this like riot and stuff, maybe you heard about that. And so I felt right at home there, and that neighborhood at that time was like, it was pretty down and out, so there were a lot of older Polish and Ukrainian families living there. And so there were a lot of really cool, like mom and pop sandwich shops and Polish and Ukrainian restaurants and butchers and stuff. So it was really neat from that aspect. But then again, most of the people living there were like musicians and artists or writers or, people there doing that and living in these cheap ass apartments in like pretty beat up neighborhood. But it was such a great vibe there. And the local pub we had, at any one time, one of the guys I used to go drink with a lot there was Wayne Kramer from the MC5. He was there, and some guys from television, and those like 1970s Lower East Side punk bands living there. Ivan Julian, guys like this. So it's a very cool place to be. And so when I found out, as I said earlier, that my stay at Forbidden Planet kept getting pushed back and back, I thought, well, I'm going to need to do something, just to fill up the evening so I'm just not sat in the bar all the time getting into trouble. And so I put together a band which was some of the Forbidden Planet guys, whoever could play an instrument said, okay, you're hired, And my roommate played keyboard, so he was hired. And we got a guitarist and a bass player from the local bar and just put together like a jam band. And they said, what are we going to play? I said, well, we're going to play ska music. And everybody's like, well, what's that? It's like, so I had to kind of teach them how to play it, don't play on the beat, play off the beat. And so instead of here, it's like there. And so that was kind of fun getting that up and running. That particular studio, rehearsal studio referencing was 171 Avenue A, and the guy running that was this guy Jerry Weems, who was a pretty famous like punk rock producer in New York at that time.
Yeah.
And so in that room, we used to rehearse there a couple of times a week, but also rehearsing there was Murphy's Law, the guys from the CRO MAGS, and the Bad Brains at that time. In fact, I think HR was actually living there at the time, and I remember the studio when I was mad at him because he booked a West Coast tour on his phone and didn't pay the bill, so he had this like huge $2,000 phone bill that he ran out on. So
yeah,
I still think he hasn't paid him back for that. But so that was our room. So it was pretty historical unit with all those bands. So we because of that we got a really good relationship with a lot of the New York hardcore guys and did some collaborations with them going on. Did a lot of touring with Murphy's Law, which is really fun.
So whatever happened to that space? Do you know like what it is today?
No, but I mean, that area got really heavily gentrified after about 1985 or so. That song Decision at Midnight we wrote is about that process and how spaces like that and people like that really got like kicked out, and so they could open up like Starbucks and Gap and all this like nonsense bullshit, McDonald's, all this shit that nobody really wants. And so that dissipated, but it was a great moment. Yeah. And our drummer at the time, Scott Jarvis, produced the Beastie Boys Cookie Puss EP because they were rehearsing in there as well. So, and they were all about 14 years old at that time.
Oh my God!
We were like, who are these like annoying little spotty kids? And look what happened to them,
Yeah.
So, but it was a great time, great experience. And at that point, like the New York scene was really, really happening. I go back to New York now, and like, my God, what happened to this place? All the life went out of it,
I actually, a few years ago, I was in New York City visiting, and a friend had tipped me off, like John Joseph from CRO MAGS had this walking tour of the Lower East Side, and I did it, and it was really cool. He like shows you, he's like, this was this, and because he was there.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
So that was really cool. Of like, he's like, this used to be this place, and
the militant vegan. Well, we used to I have a funny Harley story. He was the bar we used to drink at was a place called the Park Inn Tavern. Mm-hmm. And that's where the bartender was the guitarist and the toasters to start. And I think at that time Harley was about 12, and his mother, he was like a latchkey kid, he had to like go home. So the guy at the bar said, well, so he's not wandering around by himself, he can come here and play the Robotron machine for a couple hours until you come and pick him up. So he'd always be there at the bar with this like Coca-Cola or whatever, playing the machine. And even as a 12-year-old, he was a pretty stroppy kid. So,
oh my God,
so that's pretty funny. So I watched him grow up,
That's cool.
Or not grow up, as the case may be.
Yeah. Well, so you've had your hands in a lot of things. You're a very smart businessman, and so I read that you have a consulting business for tours and production, right?
Yeah, that's mostly based on helping bands ska bands mostly, but I've done a lot of work for other people.
Yeah.
You know, touring around Europe. But having said that, I've done some work for like the John Lennon Foundation and people like that. So I've done a few corporate gigs with that, which I don't really like because those people don't understand anything, you know.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they set out to something they want to achieve. It's like, oh, find us a bus that we can turn into a mobile recording studio, but they don't really have any flexibility if they want to do, so they don't understand about having options and why they can't do certain things. So, you know, it's like it's what happens when people are just, you know, sitting on somebody else's money and not really being creative in what they do.
Yeah.
But the production business is mostly helping bands like find transport and backline and t-shirt printers and booking agents and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's really cool because you're playing like an active role in supporting the scene while, you know, like earning an income in what you love to do, music.
Yeah, but it's mostly like helping out buddies, so it's like it's not really something I'd making a lot of money off, but it's something to help them out and just, you know, do something creative when I'm sitting at home doing nothing. You know?
For sure.
Which I've been doing a lot of the last 18 months.
Of course.
Unfortunately, nobody else has been touring, so that's that part of my life has been pretty quiet.
What was your favorite part about today of this being kind of your first show back in so
Well,
long?
I don't know if you heard the banter. I mean, I was pretty excited to be just getting back on the stage, but at the same time pretty nervous. I'm thinking to myself, wow, am I going to like remember the songs? Because when you're up there playing, you don't really have time to think about the chords you're playing or the words you're singing. You have to get into the point where that stuff is just coming out automatic.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm thinking, well, maybe that mechanism has been disturbed and the force won't be with me and I won't be able to just like have the, you know, have the spiel. But I only messed up the lyrics on one song, so I'm pretty happy about that. But the main thing is just being able to get back with the guys after such a long layoff. Our last show was actually in Sao Paulo, Brazil, like almost 18 months ago.
Oh my God.
So it's been a long break. And for us, it's like, I mean, I've never had that much time off.
Yeah.
In the last 40 years.
Yeah, I feel like the Toasters is a band that's kind of always been playing shows, whether it's just like, you know, shows here and there sprinkled in or like full tours. There's always something going on.
Well, we're over 6,000 live shows now.
That's crazy.
Career-wide, but I mean that average took a big hit this last 18 months.
Of course. Well,
But,
so you guys do have a big tour coming up to celebrate the 40 years of the Toasters, right?
Well, that was supposed to be happening the last 18 months. So it's all been, what's happened is everything got like kicked back to 2021 and 2022 now in Europe. And so the next segment is after Thanksgiving. We'll come out to the West Coast again. So maybe we'll see you in another show.
Yeah.
You can ask me the rest of the questions. So, but that feels great to be back in the saddle, you know, booking hotels and doing itineraries and advancing shows and arranging things. So I miss that. I miss that part of it. There's only so much you can ride your bike and do the gardening, you know what I mean?
God, I know. Like, it was just boring. It was boring being like, it was boring. And like, I was talking to some other bands today about that, of just like, you know, the waves of depression that come through because you're just like in this stagnant place of like, oh my God, I don't want to get sick, but.
Yeah, well, I was really trying hard not to go there. And I mean, because there was like a huge negative side to it, but I really didn't want to give into that. And I realized early on, I mean, I caught myself being a little snarky and like, bad-tempered, and I thought, you know, around my family, and I thought, well, I got to stop because this is what it is. So I got to get used to the fact this is happening.
Yeah.
So I got to find some other things to do, and just keep a positive mental attitude about it, and work towards setting it back up. But you know, it was disheartening unbooking all these shows and rescheduling, and then having to unbook them and reschedule them and just keep doing this stuff. So it was just like a real negative cycle there, so it's hard not to to give into that. But I didn't. So I bought a bike and go cycling like 20 miles every morning.
And that's really healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, it was the same thing of like all the bands where it's just like, you think that, okay, we're going to do a show. And no, stop. We're not doing it. We have postpone.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Well, I just, I realized so long it's going to be what it is. So it's like, there's no point trying to make that go any faster. It wants to go. That's just, that's a losing ticket. So, I mean, I was able to sneak up on quite a few deer early in the morning. Didn't hear me. I live on the edge of the city, so there's like behind me, there's like a lot of open country and animals and stuff. So I'd sneak up on them pretty good.
And then do what? They just run away, right?
They run. It's amazing how high those things can jump. Because on the sides of the roads down there's all these like cattle fences which are like 4 or 5 feet high, like barbed wire or steel, and they just go over that like it's not even there. So it's pretty crazy. It's like they're on springs, But I have like wild pigs and coyotes and all kinds of stuff in the back of the house.
I live in Hollywood, so I cannot relate to any of that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to close with that and say thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, how's it going? This is Bucket from the Toasters. You're tuned into Last Rockers TV.